I just wanted to reach out to everybody so you can see my screen okay, or you're hearing my voice okay. I've got some music playing, so I'm not sure if that's stemming through.
Yep, music's working.
Perfect. We're going to have the chat room open, so feel free to ask questions during the event. Joe and I will be monitoring the chat room and weaving those questions into the conversation today. We'll go over that again at 10.
Pandora has the songs your ears need. RockAuto.com has the parts your car needs. Name brand parts delivered right to your door. Why limit your choices and pay way too much at a chain store? RockAuto.com has everything from complex sensors to tail lamps, new carpet, and even motor oil. Head to RockAuto.com now to see all the parts available for your vehicles. Write Pandora in the How Did You Hear About Us box so that they know we sent you. All the parts your car will never need. RockAuto.com. If you like pina colada.
Spilled your pina colada? Bounty picks up spills quicker and is 2 times more absorbent than the leading ordinary brand.
If you like pina
Bounty, the quicker pickle.
Show me how you do that trick. The one that makes me scream, she said. The one that makes me laugh, she said. Threw her arms around my neck. Show me how you do it. And I promise that I'll run away with you. I'll run away with you.
right. How's everybody doing this morning? Coming up on 10. We'll give it another minute here for any of the late people showing up, but we will start on time. Appreciate you that are on early, cameras on. That's the way we roll, right? We got to see faces. We can't train to blank screens. That's a really hard thing to do. We're going to cover some of that, but that's one of the first things that we learned early on is when I'm staring at a screen of people, got to see faces. I got to see the smiles.
Or even the personal interaction, right? Got to see the people.
Absolutely. All right, so it's 10 o'clock, so we're going to get going here. Dave Donaldson here. I'm your regional tech director, along with Joe Martin, our area director. We wanted to take the time today to go over train the virtual trainer. Obviously, we've been doing a lot of virtual trainings, but you may not have, or you might be looking for some better skills. Now, while this is a training element, I also think there's a lot of information, as I said in my introductory video, that you could take things that we do in this type of an environment and apply it to your day-to-day business and how you're working with your consumers. What do you think about that, Joe?
I think it's great because I think that what I've seen with not only my time, but also our agents' times is that the ability to get save time in traffic, but also get more people to sign on to your trainings. Your ability to reach a lot more people can be done through Zoom. And there's some differences between in-person training, in-person seminars, and virtual seminars. And there's definitely some strategies around getting higher engagement, but also making sure that you don't have distractions and you make it a really focused time. So I'm really excited about being able to pour back into our Virginia region, West Virginia region, and how to make these really successful.
Yeah, you couldn't be more spot on. So some of the things we're going to go through today, and we're going to go over how you should prepare for your class, talk about different expectations that you can set up, differences, as Joe mentioned, in virtual delivery versus in-person, some things that we've been used to in the past, and what you can do as an instructor or as a host to adjust your content effectively and be able to deliver that utilizing the virtual platform that you might be on. So while we've got a number of people that are on the class right now that will look to engage with you during this. So you can either use chat or feel free to unmute yourself. And for those of you that don't know some of the shortcuts, right? So if you're currently muted, right, and you want to speak up, all you have to do is hold down your space bar. It's one of those things that I picked up early on that I didn't know of. That's a great thing about learning from others. But if you don't want to unmute yourself by turning on and off, you can hold down your space bar, make sure you're clicked on that screen, and that will open up your mic. So I do have a question for you. Who's attended virtual training, and what has that experience been like for you as a participant?
So, hey, good morning, guys. It's Pam. So
Hi, Pam.
I think the answer is we've all attended some virtual training lately. And the experience for me is it's been a lot more comfortable than I think we would have thought. And we're getting a lot of requests to keep doing it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Who else has got something? What has your experience been?
I found it to be actually a little easier because of the screen shares. It's been easier to help people with what they're struggling with because you can actually see what they're doing, and they can see what you're doing and follow along.
You're right, right? If you understand the tools that you're working with, it can be a very enjoyable and beneficial platform. But as we'll learn, not every type of training subscribes itself or lends itself to virtual training. So we have to be mindful of that, right?
I've enjoyed the fact that we see more people on some of these trainings. That makes it more accessible, that perhaps weren't coming into the office for whatever reason. I think we're reaching more people through it.
I agree. I've certainly seen people that I haven't seen in our market centers, either they do work remotely or virtually in their world and aren't coming into the office as regular. And now that this provided them a platform that they can engage with. And I certainly see this as a vehicle, as an instructor and a trainer, that not just for me, but for you and the associates in your businesses, that going forward, this has incredibly changed how we're going to work and what our consumers are going to expect, right? Because they're comfortable with it now too. So you're going to now look to schedule appointments, and in their house like we traditionally have done. And they may say, hey, you know what? How about I just give you a virtual tour? Or how about we just jump on a Zoom and talk about what we need to talk about? So opening up yourself to change is the new norm in that capacity. All right, so let's talk about some of the challenges of virtual training and why virtual facilitation can be different than personal. You know, understanding that virtually it can be the same day, but we have to make adjustments to deal with some of the unique challenges in the virtual classrooms, right? With in-person classes, you know, everyone can be involved, right? You can see them eye to eye if they're not hiding behind their camera, right? You can check their mannerisms a little bit better about how they're engaging. You know whether or not they might be checking email or on their phones, as I know a lot of that tends to happen right now. Virtual classes, people at home, they can check out and maybe not be as engaged. So you have to kind of look for cues that how they're participating, right? And there are some things that might interrupt the participants because they've been sitting at their desks all day and their kids start climbing all over them. So you can adapt to this by providing more opportunities for breaks depending on and be conscious how long your presentation is going to be.
Yeah, I think when you're looking at your in-person versus virtual, I think, you know, great question here, and blow up the text box for me on this one is, when you've had great virtual training, what are some of the top 3 things that you see the facilitator do, or even the participants do? So let's fill up that chat box in regards to the top 3 things you see that really help out engagement right there. And the piece to understand is that in a virtual setting, you don't have control. Right? Like, I know when I go into a training facility, I'm like, okay, I'm going to be there early. I'm going to introduce myself to everybody. They're going to get there on time. We're going to be able to set expectations in the beginning. There's no distractions. And when you go to a virtual setting, you got to realize that, you know, they might be in their home office, or they might be on their kitchen counter or their island counter, right? And you've got in a virtual setting, you might have kids, dogs, you know, neighbors doing yard work, whatever it may be. So you've got to take into account all these different outside factors. And honestly, what I've seen that really works well in that is to kind of make a joke about it, right? Like, you know, the kid's crying, oh, got that one, and be real with people, right? Like, there's a sense of authenticity and relating to people, getting like, I get it, you're working from home, you've got the kids there, you've got outside factors you never had before, and I'm with you. So I think there's some aspects of, you know, be human in those regards, and make sure that people don't feel embarrassed because of something going on.
Yeah, perfect. And thank you also, as you're seeing, as we're working through this, and we're throwing this back to you guys, because that's the type of engagement as an instructor we need you guys involved. Right? So great stuff coming in through the chat room, right? Make sure your camera's on, keeping people engaged. The energy of the presenter, that can be, you know, as a presenter, it's challenging. I feel like I'm pretty good in front of a room, but being at my computer, at my desk all day, I can feel change. So I have to be conscious of my energy level and how that's coming across. Lighting, certainly, front light, back light. Do you have a loom? We're going to talk about some of the things to the end that you can incorporate to make yourself a little bit successful. It's funny, I've watched this evolve over the last couple of, I want to say weeks, but now months, with the virtual backgrounds and the screens and the challenges people have had with that. But we were learning, right? We were failing forward through the technology and having fun with it at the same time. And it's perfectly acceptable. I have, early on, I had people get tense, right? You're having conversations, or I'm in a business meeting, but you get your kids at home, right? And they're climbing all over you like you're a jungle gym. And I was working with an associate. I remember he was so stressed out because he was embarrassed that his kids were engaging that way while he was trying to talk to me. And I said, look, relax, it's okay. They're learning too, right? Now, here we are 3 months later, my kids are completely immune to me being on Zoom. They don't care. Like, they'll barge into my office. You all have seen it. Dylan's been on, his screen time is half of my time. Like, he pops in, he says hi, he demands things, and be comfortable. It's okay. I understand that.
Yeah, I think the other part too is you got to look at timing. I think the one piece that I don't know how many of you have had Zooms that someone thinks it's a good idea to send you a 3-hour Zoom invitation. I don't know about you, but I get those, and I'm like, I don't know about that one. So I think it's also important to understand that you can have an all-day training and knock out, you know, whether it's win with sellers or, you know, career visioning, Market Center Financials, Agent Financials. And those can be full day classes because as a facilitator, you can stop an hour and a half to 2 hours in, give a 5-minute, 10-minute phone break, facilities break. But when it comes to virtual, some people are going to have that feeling of like, oh, I don't want to sit here for 7 hours, but I have respect for the facilitator. And then you've got all these outside factors that are going on. So you really have to pivot your virtual trainings to be what we have found about no more than 2 hours. You want to give a break somewhere between 50 and 60 minutes into that 2-hour break, and then break it up over a series of trainings as opposed to just one full day.
I think a factor, if I could as well, is advance notice. I think unfortunately, when things were done in person, you had a lot more lead time to know that it was happening so you could plan for it. And I think with Zooms, we tend to think, oh, I'll just do this in 10 minutes. We'll have an hour training. So I think there needs to be consideration as well of, giving an advance notice so people can plan their schedule and day and sticking to that schedule.
You know what? That's a great point. And that leads us as a segue into our next set of next conversation is the setup, right? Connecting your prior knowledge about what makes for good classroom training and bringing it online and being able to describe person versus in-person virtual, right? Choosing what training to deliver, when to deliver it. If you're expecting a lot of people, some platforms work better than others, right? Do I do a webinar? Do I do a Zoom? Right? Do I do GoToMeeting? What's your comfort, your skill level? What's available to you through your market center, to you personally, either through free 99, right, or something that you have to pay and compensate for? Obviously, in this type of environment, we have a Zoom that allows us to have up to 500 people, right? There's a cost to that. But I know if I'm going to do something one-on-one, I can have, in that platform, I can have a one-on-one up to 40 minutes for free. Anything larger than that, I have to have an improved platform to work for. So jumping on quickly can be great for, hey, Sheila, we need to get on and discuss something. But if I actually want to be respectful of your time and my time, right, I want to consider all the things and factors involved with that. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I think like when you look at software, right, like I'm particularly experienced with Zoom, so I can figure out, we brought up Michelle, great point, like as a co-host or if you're a facilitator, know that you're designated as a host, you can help mute people, right? Especially when people don't know that they're unmuted, right? We're all human here. And I think when the software goes is that, do you know everything that Zoom can do? And bringing up your point of the 40 minutes, I've actually set up the free Zoom with some of my groups, mainly so that we don't go longer than 40 minutes, right? That it kicks you off and it's like, okay, we set some timestamps there. But I've also had the experience of jumping on a Google Hangout. So for those of you that don't know, Google actually allowed you to have Google Hangouts, and you can actually use that for free. Now the whole interface is different. The settings are different. How you look, like it's a completely different one. And I logged in, and luckily I wasn't a facilitator, and I didn't know anything. So I think it's huge to understand what your software is. The last thing you want to do is be like I'm sure most of us are like, oh, I'll figure it out. I'm pretty intuitive. I'm pretty smart. You pop on and you're like, oh, this is a completely different interface. And I am SOL for the most part, trying to figure out what's going on here, right? And what's really cool to me is that with the increase in Zoom usage, the features of Zoom have gotten incredible. So if you go into your Zoom account, you can actually go into settings and have all these different types of functions and recordings, everything under the sun. It's amazing when you do a little bit of research on the software you're using and the abilities to do. Like one of the things I talked to Dave was, I see these polls, like, can we do that in Zoom? He's like, yeah, you haven't looked. I go, well, that's me not being inquisitive, right? And I think that's the cool part is how do you get that? How do you make it so that you have fluid interactions and it makes it fun? And going into like, what are you teaching, right? I think it goes, Dave made a good point, is that if you're just getting on a conference call and you're like, hey, we just need to like talk about 3 things. We just need crowdsource, move it, and you're in a small group. That might be better for a phone call and just get everybody on there, knock it out real quick. If you're looking to engage and get people on there, it might be better with Zoom. But what you're teaching also matters as well. Like if you're doing more of like script practice, discussion, group interactions, it's probably going to be better for Zoom. But if you're trying to do something that actually has handwritten workshop style things, that might have to be more in person. So being aware of the content that you're presenting to people is going to be extremely important, because if you're doing like a workshop and you've got 30 people on a Zoom and you've got 30 different people trying to ask like, hey, did I do these numbers right? Is this the right format? Am I answering the question correctly? What does this mean? You're going to have a hard time trying to give one-on-one in that type of workshop setting, as opposed to being in person, right? Where you can walk around the room, give a one-on-one, talk to them. I know we're gonna have some struggles with that, especially with social distancing, yet understanding what is the interaction and what is the actual purpose that you're teaching to is gonna be really important on designating whether or not it's a Zoom, phone call, in-person type of thing.
Yeah, spot on with that. Understanding your platform, giving yourself time to learn the platform, super important, right? Walking through, and if you haven't done this yet and you're hosting or doing Zoom trainings or even meetings, go in those settings tabs, understand what's behind there and what those triggers are, right? People can, if you've been involved in some of these classes where people come in and hijack your classroom, right? That happens, right? Understanding to turn off annotations, or the importance of, depending on the size of your audience or what your audience is and how you broadcast it. Do I want to use something that's password protected? Do I want to insist that people have their cameras on so I can see who they are? Do I want to have a register only access type of event that we've done? And again, that goes back to understanding who your audience is, what your subject is, and what you're trying to accomplish to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And I think it's good to get feedback from other people on your team too, right? Like I'll give a live example. My agent service director, Lori, at convenient times, I sent out this time for an event at like 6 o'clock. And she texts me back and goes, you realize that that's when people are putting their like kids into the tub or dinner time, and that might not be the best. And I was like, oh, I didn't even think about that. So understanding your convenience like of times and when you're going through that is going to be really important too. So being cognizant of other people on the team and crowdsourcing that to figure out, is it good in the morning? Is it good in the afternoon? And really trying to figure out where you're going to drive the most attendance based on people's schedules.
Yeah, and that's important, especially when you look at a company as large as ours. And the more training I do, I obviously do a lot in the region, so I don't have time zones to do, but I'm starting to do things more on a national level or engaging with KWI, right? Their timetables around Central Time, so that's 1 hour off, right? I deal with a lot of people out in the Pacific. That's a 3-hour difference. So sometimes juggling those calendars and who I'm talking to can be a little bit of a creative challenge. At the end, we're going to go over some of the tech, but we're talking a lot about time, and I want to share something with you guys that I use. And if you guys can see this, this is called a time timer, right? So it's kind of a backwards countdown for me that I have started to use over the last couple of weeks to be conscious of my time, because sometimes I could just ramble on, and that we have those conversations that don't keep me to my calendar, which is chock full of meetings right now. So I use this for my trainings, for my breakouts, for my one-on-ones, just to be sensitive of everybody's time. And it's like a, I don't know, $20 investment I made, and it's been fantastic, and I use it regularly. They're not our sponsor, but I just thought I would share that. Especially if you're doing longer things, right? And you need to make sure you adhere to breakouts for people. That comes in really, really handy to using your time.
Yeah, the other part with time too, it's also good to work with like if you have family in the house with you when you're working from home, you might even want to give your participants a heads up that, hey, it could help you to have a sign on your door, right? So that your entire family know that, hey, there's a sign that this is when mom or dad or whoever is going to be in it. You're not going to be accessible. Please respect that. So at least everybody knows there's a clear focus time for you just not to be interrupted. So it's also protecting you for that.
Step 2, when we're talking about setup, and you'll see some of the things we're kind of going in and out of some of these slides a little bit. Setting yourself up, like even for an event like today, and this is an environment that I've been working in for a while. This is a class. While I've never taught this class, I've utilized the tools and kind of understand what I'm presenting. There's some things I'm comfortable with that I could just jump on the fly, but I even took the time over the last 2 days to kind of think through so I could cover all the basics that I do with you, right? I walked through my slide deck with Joe. I looked at my virtual space here and saying, what do I have of value that I can share with these people? And I wanted to set up, like my setup is not just inclusive of the environment that I'm working with, but my surroundings. What does that look like? Some of you guys, I mentioned my time timer. I've got 2 different speakers on my desk, right? You see me drinking water. I've got that in reach, right? Water's important. I've got to stay hydrated with all the conversations. What's around me that I need to have access to, right? So there's that second level of preparation that I don't think everybody kind of thinks through when they're getting ready for this, right? Because you'll see people jump around. It sounds funny, right? It's like kind of like going on a road trip. Like you go to your kids, hey, is everybody gone to the bathroom yet? Let's kind of, I'm going to be on a call for 2 hours. Let's make sure we check all those physical space aspects to it. A lot of the others, you talked about camera and lighting and things like that. But yeah, so you're all getting comfortable with that.
Dave, how do you feel about virtual backgrounds?
I love them. I have fun with them, right? Those of you that have been calls with me, I do incorporate them. See, today I'm not doing one, right? I've started to use more of my office background, but for certain events, I will play with some different things. I had the Eagles, when the draft day was going on, I had a draft setting, right? When it was May the 4th be with you, I had a Star Wars background. When I'm doing some regional events, I'll have a regional backdrop or a market center backdrop. I think it's a great way to express who you are. I think when you're participating in an event like today, I think it's great. When you're the presenter, I think you need to be careful of a couple of things. What does that background say? Is it too gimmicky? Is it too funny? Does it not fit what you're doing, right? Are my eyes and mouth or my halo glowing, right? Do I have a proper configuration, right? We've seen that. And that has to do with too much front light or too much backlight. Do I need a green screen? That goes to that testing.
Yeah, I think that's, the whole idea. I think it's fine for, participants with virtual backgrounds, especially if you're trying to block out clutter or whatnot. But as a facilitator, it could cause some distractions. So you really want to be present to the fact of keeping people focused and not having reasons why someone's attention might go somewhere else. So
yes.
Good. So you got mute all notifications in that regards?
What's that?
Go ahead, Dave. Sorry.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So let me ask you guys, what are some things a trainer can do that makes you trust them more in an environment like this?
This is Cheryl in Lynchburg. I think one thing, and this is something I'm not all that great at because of my setup, but I think one thing is even just the distance. So Joe and David, you guys, your faces are really close to the camera and my desk doesn't allow me that. So, which is fine for being a participant, but I think for being a trainer, it's probably better that the camera is really close.
Great. Yeah, I work on positioning. I know sometimes I get comfortable and I'll sit back in my chair, but I have to be conscious of my audience and I'll play with my setup on my screen every now and then. You'll see me, sometimes I want to hide and I'll slide down a little bit, mess with my screen and come back in. But those are the things that I do try to be conscious of so that I can engage and people can see my face. That's a really great point. Who else? What are some things that an instructor can do that, that you guys feel like, hey, I can trust this person when they're presenting something to me? What comes across? What are you looking for?
Well, you've already spoken to it, but you and Joe both, it's like understand the platform you're using. If you start the training going, well, I think if I click here, it does this, you're going to lose people.
Yeah, things are coming in, right? Appearance, right? I'm not wearing a hat today. I've been wearing a hat a lot lately, right? My hair's getting a little bit, some things you don't typically worry about, right? How do I dress? Well, we're in a very relaxed, some of us are in our PJs, some of us are in comfy clothes, right? If you notice when I dress, I still dress on most of my calls like I do when I was in training in a market center. I'm probably gonna have a lab shirt on, right? I got my KW swag on today, right? Lead listings and leverage. So having your appearance, even though we are kind of in a dress down company, if you're carrying the audience, how you look, right, carries a lot of credence to the people that you're presenting to. And I saw that kind of come up in a couple of in the chat there.
So I got a question for the crowd. Get the chat box, or if you feel comfortable, open up your mic on this one. Is one of the things about being in person is you're able to build rapport, right? Like it has to do with outside the training, being like whether it's small group interactions or one-on-ones with the trainer and the trainees. So how do you see? What are some good examples of rapport building that you've seen within a virtual setting? Whether it's icebreakers, those type of things. I think that means a lot, so that it's not like you're in a Charlie Brown episode of the teacher just womp, womp, womp at the classroom. And I think that's an important factor of like share those ideas of like, how did how did the presenter actually connect with the attendees? Hopefully I have a strong voice.
Yeah, that's a great.
That's a good one. That's really good.
Yeah, you're right. And maybe there's some practice if you're going to start doing these things. Maybe there's some practice for yourself about, how you sound, getting comfortable around it, right? I say just throw yourself into it and practice with it, right? Maybe we talk about script practice. Maybe you need to have a virtual presentation practice and partner up in that capacity, right? Hey, how do I sound? How do I look? What am I seeing? What are you seeing, right? To get over that conscious concern that we all have about ourselves when it comes to perseverance and the uncomfortable nature that a lot of this kind of presents to ourselves. Setting the expectations, we touched on this, and sending an email the night before so that your participants know what to expect. I always lead in by turning on your camera, and I don't think a lot of my change right now is I say, hey, be prepared, have your camera on. Like I don't think I've made those announcements, but that was something I came across that makes a lot of sense to kind of laying the groundwork for how you expect people to engage with you in the following day's events. And don't send it out too soon, because if I send it a week out early, right, nobody's going to read it. But if I send out a reminder the night before, they might catch it in their email in the morning as they're getting ready to check their day's calendar. They're going to read, all right, Dave needs me today, wants me to have this, wants me to have my camera on, right? Maybe I got to make sure I got to have myself up and ready to go. So I think it's okay to set the expectations for how you want to have people engage with you during that event.
For sure. I think you're also looking at what Dave hit on was a really good point about communication strategy, especially in a virtual setting, right? Is saying, if you've got an event that you're trying to market, whether it's a buyer, home workshop, sellers, any type of that, or even your teams, or even this kind of training, how do you set up a cadence that it repeats the same information over and over again in different avenues? So if it's a text blast, if it's an email, if it's phone calls, if you're putting on social media to remind people, if you have it on a drip campaign or even like Eventbrite, how do you reinforce the content and expectations, whether it's the link, if there's a password on the link, if there's certain things you want to have them set up for. This is a great time to set expectations. Like, I want to make sure everybody has their video going because this is going to be very interactive. Make sure people know those different things. So the more that you can provide reminders to people, and what we have found just for the region is sending out a reminder 24 hours before in an email format with all the information they need to know, and then another one at about 8:30 the morning of, so that people have it fresh in the top of their inbox.
Yeah. I see Todd asked about using a microphone. Joe and I are both using a microphone right now. I've got actually a couple different options. At the end, we're going to go through some of the things that Joe and I use, and I'm going to share a list with you guys of things that you can go out and look at. So you'd be surprised how inexpensive some of this stuff is that you could you start incorporating. And you might want to think about, what does that look like for me if I'm going to do a lot more of this? And it is, as Sue brought up and we stressed earlier, is like, going forward, you probably will be doing a lot of this on your business side of things too. So what do you need to do to be able to present yourself in a way that comes across as professional? And that's with the lighting or a camera or monitors or sound and things like that.
Yeah. And Sue, going back to the team meeting stuff, I can't speak for the market center leadership, but yes, there are, I think that's what something you talk with your ALC about and then your leadership team on site is there are technology and equipment that could set up in your market center or even in your leadership's offices to run team meetings where it can be virtual. So yes, it is definitely very easy to do.
Yeah, and there's other things, right? So there is a difference between a Zoom call like what we're doing now and a webinar. And that's that other level of kind of understanding, what am I presenting and what's the audience going to be? In a Zoom type of situation or even a go-to meeting, right? It's open engagement. People can chime in, they can chat, they can open up their mics, or I can allow them, they can raise their hand, they can put thumbs up, thumbs down. In a webinar situation, it's one person speaking or presenting, and that second level of the audience engagement is not there. And there are certain trainings, right? If we're giving like a state of the union type of, or state of the company type of approach to what we're doing, that might be better served in a webinar environment, so we don't have those distractions where people accidentally unmute themselves, right? Or they took a phone call and the phone's ringing. So there's important differences between the types of platforms. that you're using. So I think that's one of the biggest things. People don't understand the difference between a webinar type of event and a straight open conference Zoom call type of event. Understanding that, we covered the rules, the expectations, but how you handle things like that, knowing how to mute people, how to not get rattled with technical difficulties on your computer or somebody else's, guidelines for standing or stretching. I spend a lot of time seating because I don't have a vertical rise type of desk, but I know a lot of instructors. I do a lot of movement and I do miss that. But so I know a lot of them that stand during their events. So think about, what does that work for you? Do you need an elevated platform so you can stand up?
For sure. And I think also, like I'm using a standing desk right now because of it for the presentation piece and liking to move around, using my hand gestures. There's also an aspect of when you start up the, at the beginning of the class, is also give your participants, assume that just like when you're in a normal setting of training, assume your participants don't know, or they're at ground zero, right? And you're going to go through like, hey, bottom left of your screen where there's a little mic, that's how you mute yourself. If you hit the vertical button there, right to the right of the mic, this will give you options about which one's your microphone. Stop video. Dave did a great job of saying that quick key, hold down your space bar will unmute you, or, and so you can talk and bring you back to mute. And then showing people on the bottom pad, this is the chat function. Here's how you do a thumbs up, clap, or raise your hand during the participations thing. So it's also doing a foundational overlay explaining the different functionalities of the software platform you're on to run the meeting.
Yeah, that's a great point. You may have sent that information out the night before, but taking that 5-minute intro to cover out and giving them permission again, say, hey guys, I really want to hear from you. That's the hardest thing, is that people hear me and see me train, and I ask a lot of questions. I try to probe for engagement, and I really want that from people. And sometimes I'll call on people. Like, I'll look and I'm like, all right, are they paying attention? But I also know a lot of times who my audience is. I'm very careful to not necessarily pick on somebody I don't know, but like I'll see Sheila Watson and I know that I can grab her and get her to engage with me, right? Because I can have that give and take because I had that relationship with her.
Absolutely.
Think about your virtual delivery. Think about other trainers that you've seen, or you've listened to a podcast, or even listen to the radio. Like, this is funny, but all right, so I'm gonna date myself a little bit, but I actually like listening to the radio where I'll have a DJ or have a commentator along with me and not just streaming audio all the time. Like, I like that level of engagement. Like Wolfman Jack, I don't know if you guys know who hear him, right? I look at myself as somebody that missed a generational gap. I feel like I probably done very well had I been raised in the 50s, right? I love that music. I love that persona that can carry along. And to me, that's part of the experience. So for those of you that are trying to get into this, look at the people that are training. And we've all seen them. I've had good days and bad days on some of the things that I do, and I'll know it, right? I self-critique. But I also know when I participate and see somebody else, like, I think at this point, everybody's seen Jason Abrams give some sort of presentation. He's phenomenal. Like, his energy level, I don't know where he gets it from. It's through the roof. Like, he's professional. He's funny. He's engaging. He knows he's mastered the tools that he's utilizing with, and he sees things. Like, he's called me out on some of my calls where maybe it kind of caught me off guard that he saw me do something that was just a reaction to something he said, and he picked up on it right away and drew me into a conversation, right? I strive to be like that on how I give my virtual delivery.
Yeah, there's also some tidbits on that too, right? Like, you can see where your camera's at, and if you're constantly looking over, like, you have a double screen, and then if I look over here, I'm aware that I'm no longer making eye contact with the audience. Some other things you can do is, I know it gets distracting because I don't like looking at myself. I don't think I'm a looker. I don't have hair like Dave does. So I tend to hide my screen. So you actually have the ability to hide yourself in the Zoom conference so that you're actually engaging with your other people as opposed to yourself. The other one is when you're actually doing the presentation, know when to maybe hide the presentation, right? Because you can actually switch it to gallery view, and then you can actually see everybody on there. So we've got this up so I can see about 5 people on my right-hand side, and we've got the presentation open. But if you're going to an engagement part of your presentation, you might want to think about shutting down the presentation and letting the full gallery go through. And this goes back to setting expectations on how to use the platform. You might want to teach people that there are different view settings of like speaker views. So if I'm talking, you only see me. But if you go up there, you can switch it to gallery view and you can see everybody in the training. You can also, I found out this from some of our other Zoom calls, is you can shut down the chat function too, so that people can't interact one-on-one and they can only talk as a whole group or directly chat with the presenter or co-hosts. So there's some other aspects of understanding the virtual delivery so that you keep people focused and then also keep engagement because you're constantly changing how people are interacting.
Yeah. One of the first things I had to adapt to with all this was having a single laptop, right? I didn't have multiple screens in my office at home, right? So that was one of the things I realized very quickly, that as a presenter and an instructor, I needed to have my eyes on my camera and on my notes, but in my periphery, I've got my slides. So I'm presenting from a different screen. So you guys are seeing the slides, but on my main screen, I'm looking at chat. I'm looking at my instructor slide deck, and I have the grid of the people that I'm talking to. So I don't have to be looking up here or looking up here because I've got things going on in different areas, but allows me to spread things out and be focused on the one thing that's important to me right now, which is instructing.
Yeah, and I think to wrap this slide up, connect with each participant. Dave kicked it off and had music at the beginning. That brings some different level of energy. How do you have one-on-one conversations? And if as people join the chat, start, hey, how you doing? How's it down there? And get personal things going on. So as more participants come on, they see, oh, there's already chatter going on that is building relationship and rapport quickly.
Yeah, I always, as an instructor, I'm on 15 minutes early. And even if I'm not presenting, I'm probably on 10 minutes early so I can engage with different people and have that water cooler type of talk that we're all kind of missing right now. All right, so we're going to talk about interaction. So engaging during your meeting and training, what is going to keep people's interest? Starting to set the tone with an icebreaker. Somebody mentioned earlier about having a joke or having the music. That I'm careful. I will tell you to be careful of the music, on what you're playing. I listen to a wide variety of music. Please be conscious to your audience as to what you're going to play. If you're streaming, right? Streaming's not like public radio anymore. There are language in some of these songs, right? That I picked this up from my kids. Like I'll be listening to, something on the radio on Sirius, and then I have to be like, oh, there's some. I'm going to change the channel here. Rage Against the Machine comes on. I may enjoy that, but it's not necessarily good for my 9-year-old. So be conscious of what you're presenting, but you don't want elevator music either, right? Kind of bounce a little bit. Creating a sense of community, getting people to participate. You could stream across the Facebook, but maybe not everybody can get into the audience, so you can channel that as well. You want to get as much engagement as possible. Joe talked to the polls. Go ahead, Joe.
Yeah, I mean, there's simple stuff you can do, right? Like, and the cool part is be aware of your surroundings when you're getting into like a Zoom call. And what I mean by that is like, watch what your presenter's doing and then use that system, right? And anytime that someone has a really high level outcome, it's because they have very strategic systems that they process. So like starting with, they talk about an icebreaker, it could be as simple as, hey, if I know I'm teaching to Ignite, then I know that there's probably a lot, the production level is a little bit lower. So I'm gonna say, hey, everybody, when did you get into tell me when you got into real estate, right? But if I'm teaching career visioning, I might say right at the beginning, I wanna know how many units did everybody do last year? How long have you been in real estate? And how many people are on your team? And I'm gonna ask very simple questions at the beginning and ask for it in the chat box. And all of a sudden you're gonna see 15 years, 20 years, 100 units, 5 people on my team, and you're going to get people to start moving at the beginning and know that, hey, I need to put everything into the chat box to get that personal engagement that you would normally have in banter that would be actually on location. So that's what I mean by like icebreakers.
Perfect. And again, here's some additional examples of what icebreakers might work in a virtual classroom, right? Depending on the tools, right? You've got the thumbs up, the thumbs down, raising the hand, getting participants to vote on certain objectives, ask participants to, we talked about getting on early and how people greet other people. I'm very conscious of that. I want to go, if I involve and engage from the beginning in that 10-minute window where I'm rolling out, that sets the tone for how they know to enact, how they can interact with me during the event.
Yeah, I learned when we got this presentation from KW, 3 and 4 were eye-opening to me, because those are 3 and 4 are things that you do as you're in the room asking questions to the entire class. Rather, 3 and 4 was like, oh, why wouldn't I just put the question into PowerPoint and say, hey, respond to the question in the chat box, and we'll start going through there. Now, the piece also is that if you see someone give like a paragraph size response in your chat box, I would simply directly text them in the chat box and say, hey, do I have your permission to ask you to get on, unmute yourself and actually present that to the class on the mic? Obviously make sure you get their permission, make sure they're not scared to get on the thing. You want people to feel safe and comfortable. Yet when you get longer responses, that's a good time to prompt the participant to actually voice what they're saying.
Yeah. There's something else to be said about chat too, is you better be careful. Like, I've seen people, and I've been involved with multiple chats going on while an instruction's going on, right? As I'm in a room, I'm maybe not the instructor, but I've got 3 or 4 different people chatting me within chat. Be careful who you're responding to, right? You don't want it to go out to everybody if it's something that's, I'm just telling you to be careful, because I've seen that happen for people where they post something out that wasn't for everybody to see because they were having a conversation with somebody else. So be very careful to see that when you see the list of names, and that's a control setting, that either it goes out to everybody, or do I want people to be able to chat privately on the side?
Yeah. The other cool part about the icebreaker stuff is that you could also have an exercise at the beginning and say, hey, everybody go to this part of Zoom where you can rename yourself. And what's awesome is you can create some community aspects of saying, please put your name, hyphen, role in the company. So then if people are looking in the room to say like, oh, okay, because we like to be nosy and figure out who's this person, are they doing this, what are they doing, are they looking at the gallery view, you can start to realize, oh, we've got 3 OPs, 15 team leaders, 20 agents, and you can start to see like, oh, and then you start to relate to those people, and then you can actually direct chat with them if you allow that. So it's also another way to kind of understand who you're speaking to and who your audience is in a larger setting.
Yeah, and as an instructor, I've had a lot of fun with that, because you have control over the people's monikers too. So if I see somebody that's not paying attention, I've been known to go in there and change their name, and they don't know it, right? So if I see somebody that's not focused, I'll start using some of the 7 dwarfs names as to some of the expressions that I'm getting from people, and I'll go in there and retype their name and see how long it takes them to realize that I've done that to them. And the people of Falls Church and Fredericksburg know that, because I had them going one night that I was just playing around with them, and the instructor didn't know, and the instructor thought it was somebody else. And I created all kinds of fun infighting that I just had a blast with. So again, knowing your control mechanisms and paying attention. All right. Interactivity, right? How to engage, right? After you're breaking the ice, there are lots of ways to keep training, right? Think about the 5-minute rule, right? How, asking a question, changing the speaker, doing something of engagement every 5 minutes makes people pay attention to what's going on. Obviously, this type of environment, I love having a co-facilitator. Like Joe and I are feeding off each other really, really well, right? Sometimes it may be one person carrying the conversation, but depending on the audience and the size of the audience, just having somebody monitor chat is a lifesaver. Being able to encourage questions, relate to concepts, be a master of what you're presenting. Breakout rooms, great tool, utilizing breakout rooms, right? We use them on the regional level. I've used them in some breakouts. It's a great way to have collaborative people engage in smaller pockets, right? And as the host, you can bounce to the different, into the different rooms. So encouraging group discussions during the presentations, connecting with the audience.
Yeah, I think there's also an aspect of be okay with the silence, right? So what I've noticed, or because I'm used to being quick, fast paced, like let's move type of thing, is that some people are processing or they don't realize that they're still on mute. And then you get the unmute like 2 minutes later, be like, oh, I didn't realize I was muted. I was talking the entire time, right? So be okay with like letting the question sit a little bit. And it's tough because when you're in person, you can ask a really deep question and you can look around the room and see that people are pondering. Yet when you're in a virtual setting, I'm here in my office and I can't necessarily tell if people are pondering or if I just asked a really dumb question and everyone's kind of like, why did Joe ask that question? Can we keep it moving? And that's the real important part of having more people engage and not have the blacked out screens, so you can see what people are doing and then realize that, oh, I just need to let it sit for a couple more minutes. Eventually someone's going to respond to it.
And I'll, you know, depending on what my goal of a question or something, I'll wait it out. Like I will force engagement in my presentations, and I'll be, you know, silence is not always golden when it comes to me. I'll sit there, and then people will get a little bit uncomfortable. Like, oh, Dave really wants me to say something, but somebody say something because I don't want to speak up. And I'll sit there, wait it out. Like I'll say it. I'm like, all right, guys, we're gonna sit here until I want my 3 ahas. I'm not gonna take one. I want 3, and I'll just keep pushing. I'm very direct that way. If you know me, I will keep it going. Okay. All right, we're coming up on the end here. So perfect timing too, because as you can see, I have my timer set, and there's a couple times that I time that to be at about quarter till. So Joe, great job on the time, and gives us lots of time for questions because I knew that there would be. But what you're seeing here on the screen is photos of Joe's and mine home office. Joe, why don't you talk through what you have on your side there?
Sure, absolutely. So I've got a standing desk. I like being able to go between sitting, standing, and moving around. So right now I've got an up standing. I've got my my laptop is actually on a riser, so it's actually more eye level. So if I'm standing or sitting, I'm not looking down, so it doesn't give like a crick in the neck. So that's why you see it lifted up. It also helps out with ventilation of the MacBook. I've got a secondary monitor so that I actually have more efficiency with multiple screens going on. You see a ring light. So I'm going to show you the difference in that on lighting itself. So I've got the ring light on right now on me behind my desk. I pulled it out so you get to see it. So here's the differentials. So this is me cranking it up higher from so you don't actually see the light behind me out of that window. So it actually focuses on me. It makes, I'm not, like I said, I'm pretty ugly. So this is actually making me look better. But when you crank it down, this is what the light looks like when I've got the light off. So the light in the window behind me actually pops more by the camera because I don't have that. Now you also see that both Dave's and I's setup have us right next to the window, mainly because I want to be able to see outside, but I'm also getting natural light in me because you want light coming from behind your camera at you, right? Rather than behind you, literally coming at the camera. So you see that wireless keyboard and trackpad. The mic that you see, I put the link in the feed. It's a Yeti, it's a blue Yeti mic. It helps you so that you're not projecting, because some of your computers, based on the age, the mic sensitivity might not be all that great. And the last thing you want to do is have that go in and out. I've got an iPad stand, so if I'm doing something on Instagram or Facebook, I can live go through it because Instagram's not great for computers as far as uploading that. And then the final piece, I don't know if you can see it. I've got an external webcam because I've got a blackboard behind me that if I'm doing like a presentation, actually right on the blackboard and have an external webcam so that it feels like I'm actually presenting to them.
Awesome. Yeah, so one of the differences that you see, at least in the mic, while we have the same mic, you see he's got his mounted to his desk and I've got mine on a boom arm, right? So that's just user comfort and experience. Like I wanted it up and out of the way. I know that I sit tall. So the way that this kind of, oh, there's my beeper. The way that it picks up sound, you could change the couple different array patterns to where it picks up ambient noise or it's only coming directional for where you're at. So that's kind of how I have set up. A couple different things around my desk. I mentioned my time timer there. You see that I have my monitors elevated. I was looking at, I wanted to go with a larger format television. And I'm really glad that I went in the direction of the second and third monitor. They're HPs. They're 21.5 inches. They're not huge because I didn't want to block my window. So I could sit in a way that I could still see sunlight come in. It helps magnify the light. I don't have an external camera, so I'm using the one on my desktop, which happens to be pretty good actually. As if you've shopped for one, you will see that everybody bought them all. And I wasn't going to pay some of the inflated prices for a Logitech that I know is about $75 to $100. I wasn't going to spend $300 on one that might have been used. So, but I was lucky I had a good camera on my PC, so I'm able to utilize that. But utilizing the dual display where I can have, a command on one platform, my Zoom open on my desktop, and then another one where I just kind of monitor some other things, or maybe it's chat or the videos, the things that are going on. I also have 2 different speakers on my desktop. And the reason I have 2 is because I've got this Jabra mic, which it's just more of like a conference call. It's not great for music, but it's great for sound, and it's portable. And then I have a little bit nicer speaker that I use for sound. And the reason I have it set that way is because I can play music and I can hear conversations going on, and I can control the different levels of sound as they're coming through. I don't have a mixer, but I could turn the music up or down, and it doesn't affect somebody's voice kind of bleeding in or out over top of the music, what I'm trying to do. So that's something that I found valuable. I also have what's called a port replicator, or some of you might know as that as a docking station. That allows me to plug a lot of things in, charging devices, connect laptops, PCs, and monitors all through one platform. So that, if you're having a home office, is something that's incredibly effective. And then just having workspace. When this first started, I was working at the kitchen table, was bad light, lots of sound from the kids coming in. So I took the time to fix up my home office, and now I have got room for, you see, I've got my red book. That's always handy because I never know when I need to reference that. I have a little sign for myself to remind me to record all of my trainings because I am terrible at hitting the record button. And I've got my little notebook right next to it. As you see there, it's sitting right next to me. So as I take notes of things I need to scratch or be conscious of, I've got room to work. If you looked at my desk in my office, it's unorganized chaos. But in this environment, I realized I really needed to be structured and have everything in a way that was not disruptive to my audience. So let's get you guys back engaged over the last couple of minutes. How about you guys share some ahas with us? Tell us what you got out of this.
I have a question.
Sure.
The co-facilitator, can you go over that a little more, please, as to how you can bounce things off, coordinate, or if, one of the two's computer goes off or whatever?
I'm sorry, the call facilitator. The port replicator?
Co-facilitator. You had mentioned, you had it in one of the slides.
I'll field it. So yeah, so what Dave's talking about is Dave and I have worked with each other for about 60 days through 90 days. So we got a really good flow with each other. So what we did was, before we did this presentation, we went on there and said, Dave, hey, you're gonna run point on the PowerPoint, so he's got all the slide control. Then we said, okay, you take the first part of the presentation regards if there was 4 topics, he's got 1 and 2, I've got 3 and 4. If there's 3 topics, he's got the first half of the second, I'll pick up on the second, lead into the third topic, right? And then we strategically said, okay, who's going to be asking questions? So you saw me kind of feed in with nuggets. Dave ran point on content. I'd add some feedback or whatever, so that primarily Dave's running this and I'm sitting there asking questions or giving other additional tidbits that I've got in there or asking questions. So the co-facilitator really does need to be talked about prior to, you can't just get on this and be because if Dave and I just got on this, we'd be well, who's running point on this? Who's doing this? Dave, you're going to talk about this, so I should probably just find something else on there. So you got to actually have some flow and relationship with the person. Otherwise, you're going to, the idea behind the co-facilitator is to have a higher level of energy, because it's not just one person talking.
Okay, thanks, John. Thanks.
I just put just kind of a checklist of things about in the chat room of what I've kind of pulled. Some of this is from me. Some of it is from Jeremy Dupree, somebody that I learned from, some of them from Marty and Zach, other people that I've watched. And so this is some of the products or things that you could look into incorporating into your home office. Don't go crazy. Analyze what you have. Think about what you need, right? And maybe slowly add pieces in. Don't go, I need to go drop $1,000. I did a little bit more, a little bit quicker because of the environment that I was in, and I knew what I needed to do my job well and correctly. So I rushed to get some of the things, but even that, I wasn't crazy. Like I got the mic first. Then I realized, okay, if I was adding dual monitors, I needed my port replicator. Then I started looking at sound. So it was over about 4 to 6 weeks as I was kind of building things out and trying to understand what I needed to use. Who else has some ahas? I got one there, one question. Ahas, questions, they're both good. Question, how can I play music and allow people to talk while everyone's still? So basically, I've got 2 outputs on my side. I've got a Jabra 510, which is like a conference. It's a mic and a sound. Right? It's a plug and play USB. And then I also have a USB or wireless speaker. So you, depending on the platforms that you use, you can tell through your computer where you want sound to go through. So if I've got Pandora playing, I can tell it to play through my Altec stereo. I've got Zoom on, and I can tell it that I want the sound conversations to come through my Jabra. And then I want my microphone to be my Yeti. So those are all control settings on your PC that you can route and redirecting input and output devices on your desktop. So that's why I have one that's just your guys' sound coming through my Jabra 510. And then when I was playing music, that was coming from my stereo.
Sheila, we'd have to go look at that because I've got a free Zoom account that I do small groups with to keep it under 40 minutes. And I did this on Wednesday and they didn't have to have a password. Recently, Zoom, because of the encryption issues that you saw come up with them, kind of get some bad publicity about Zoom bombing. I think they had a setting change where they forced everybody to have a password to get on, and you've got to go in there manually and change that over. So just an FYI on there.
Yeah, somebody mentioned they don't like background music. I'm very careful about the music, right? I kind of referred to that earlier. I think it's okay, and again, it's my personal choice, it's personal preference, as a lead in just to kind of get the room going, right? Obviously I'm not playing it while I'm doing the actual event. It's just something that's in a lead up time, or how, maybe I'm doing a happy hour and I'm kind of bumping it up. So again, it depends on your audience and depends on your comfort level. Someone wants to host music bingo. Diane, tell me a little bit more about that. What are you thinking? Okay. She wanted to host music bingo, and so I just wanted to hear a little bit more, but that kind of sounded kind of cool. Any specific questions for Joe and I? We're down to the last couple of minutes here. I just want to make sure that you guys get all the information that that you need from us while you have us here, and or if there was anything that we went over or showed you how to use. I'd love to hear, what you think. I know somebody touched on this earlier about how you're going to incorporate this type of environment going forward. Do you guys see yourself working and continue to work this way once we get set free to a degree, or not? Or do you just think you're going to go back to the status quo?
Hey, David.
Yes. Hey, Katie.
Hi, David. Just a quick comment. I know a lot of us are using laptops, and of course, Wi-Fi is king. However, with Zoom and when you're streaming, especially something that's as high data driven as video and audio combined, if at all possible, if you can get a plug in to your router and use a wired connection to your computer, it helps your broadcast and your reception of everyone else that much stronger and more consistent overall.
Yeah, that's a great point. My laptop does not have an Ethernet port, right? So so I have to get an adapter for that. It's something I was shopping for, right? But I have a booster in my office to circumvent some of the challenges and latencies that I was having in my home office. But you're 100% right. Being able to plug directly into that port will abate a lot of those challenges. Great feedback.
I have a Microsoft Surface Book, so it does not have an Ethernet plug in it.
Right.
But my Microsoft port replicator does, that I have it plugged into when I'm sitting at my desk. So
Yep.
I don't have it hooked up yet because my router's clear across the room, and it wouldn't be easy to run a 30-foot line
Yeah.
through the middle of my living room floor. But it's something I'm going to try to play around with and see if I can't make it work without tripping over it. Or maybe I just plug it in for when I'm going to be doing Zoom calls. But even if it's not on your laptop, if you can find a port replicator that works with your machine, oftentimes they'll have Ethernet plugs on there. Or find one where you can get an adapter for the Cat 35 that will go into like a USB port or something on your computer.
Yeah, so in my environment, I haven't done it, but I have the booster in my office, but I could, and I want to, just like you talked about, run the Ethernet from my booster to my port replicator. And that's my workaround for home.
Probably what it is.
Okay, well, it's 11 o'clock. And if there's no other questions, I'm respectful of your time. Joe and I want to thank you all for joining us today. We had fun. I hope we came across as jovial and fun and engaging. And this will be recorded. We'll post it on the YouTube channel. Crop and copy those notes of those things that we listed out for you guys. And we'll see you all again soon.
Awesome. Have a great Friday, everybody.